Welcome back to From the Pages of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the November 1985 issue. And this magazine drops you right into the middle of one of the most electric periods professional wrestling had ever seen. A time when territory rivalries were raging across the country. Champions were larger than life. And every issue of PWI felt like a packed arena program loaded with heroes, villains, and controversy. Before we dive deeper, if you enjoy reliving wrestling history like this, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Because every episode we open another magazine and step back into the era when these pages were the internet of professional wrestling. The issue begins with the familiar voice of the fans themselves in the Between Falls letters section, where readers from across the country respond passionately to the previous month's coverage. Wrestling fans in 1985 were never shy about sharing their opinions, and the letters reflect that energy. One reader jumps to the defense of Hulk Hogan, arguing that criticism of the champion is unfair after seeing him wrestle in person and noticing that something seemed wrong with Hogan the night he was counted out against Magnificent Morocco. The letter describes how the fan's son had been scheduled to present Hogan with an engraved plaque after the match, showing just how invested fans were in the heroes of the era. And these letters capture the emotional connection readers had with the wrestlers and remind you that every issue of PWI was part magazine, part community bulletin board where fans debated their favorites and defended their champions. From there, the magazine moves into Ringside with Bill Apter, where the longtime editor delivers a rapid-fire tour of wrestling's territories. Apter reports on major developments, including the growing power of Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez, who have captured the world-class tag team championship and now sit in a remarkable position with Adams holding the American title and Hernandez carrying the Texas title. The Von Erich family is watching closely, hoping to reclaim dominance in Dallas while the entire territory buzzes with tension over the six-man championships. Meanwhile, in Florida, Hercules Hernandez has defeated Hector Guerrero for the Florida state title, signaling another power shift in that region. Columns like this were the heartbeat of PWI because they stitched together dozens of territories and promotions into one shared wrestling universe, allowing fans in New York, Chicago, Dallas, or Los Angeles to follow the entire sport through one magazine. And one of the centerpieces of the issue is the feature titled Ric Flair, the Arrogance of Greatness. And if any wrestler embodied the idea that arrogance could be a weapon, it was the Nature Boy himself. The article explores how Flair's confidence borders on theatrical arrogance, yet somehow fuels his success as NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Opponents across the country line up for their chance at the title, but Flair always seems to walk away with the gold still around his waist and another expensive suit waiting in the locker room. The piece paints a picture of a champion who thrives on attention, thrives on pressure, and thrives on the hatred of fans who desperately want to see him humbled. Flair's interviews dripping with swagger, his limousine lifestyle, and his ability to survive brutal title defenses all combine to create a portrait of a champion who knows he is the center of the wrestling world and enjoys every second of it. Another major feature steps into the Texas territory with a story about the rivalry between Greg Valentine and Rick Steamboat, a feud already burning hot but made even more volatile by the involvement of Roddy Piper. The article suggests that while Valentine and Steamboat batter each other night after night, Piper waits patiently to benefit from the chaos. It is classic wrestling storytelling, three personalities colliding with each man convinced he will be the one left standing when the dust settles. In an era when rivalries stretched from arena to arena across the country, stories like this captured the sense that every match was just another chapter in a long-running drama. The magazine then turns its spotlight to a powerful moment in the career of Sgt Slaughter with the feature America's Wrestler Becomes America's Champion, detailing his victory over Larry Zbyszko for the America's title. Slaughter was one of the most recognizable personalities of the era, a towering drill sergeant who carried himself like a military commander inside the ring. Defeating Zbyszko was more than a victory. It symbolized Slaughter's rise as one of the sport's dominant figures. And the article describes the intensity of the match, along with the patriotic pride that defined Slaughter's persona during this period. For fans who saw him as a hero, the win felt like a national triumph, while for his rivals, it was another obstacle standing in their path to championship glory. The magazine also features a profile called King's Court Bill Watts, focusing on one of the toughest men ever to step inside the squared circle. Watts had the reputation of being a wrestler who could intimidate opponents simply by walking into the building, and the story recounts how promoters often relied on him when a territory needed someone capable of restoring order. Watts combined brute strength with a fierce competitive spirit, and his influence extended beyond the ring as he became a powerful figure behind the scenes in wrestling promotion as well. The article reads almost like a warning to anyone thinking about crossing paths with him, because once Watts set his sights on an opponent, the battle was rarely short or gentle. One of the most fascinating sections of the magazine comes in the press conference feature, where the editors sit down with Ole Anderson following a national tag team title defense in Atlanta. Anderson speaks bluntly about the formation of the new Minnesota Wrecking Crew, alongside Arn Anderson and the duo's determination to dominate tag team wrestling. Strength, determination, and teamwork are the qualities Ole points to when explaining why the team has succeeded, and he wastes little time insulting rivals such as Manny Fernandez, Dusty Rhodes, Dick Slater, Buzz Sawyer, and Magnum TA, promising that each of them will eventually fall before the Wrecking Crew's relentless assault. The interview captures Ole's personality, perfectly sharp, confident, and unapologetically aggressive, a man who believed that tag team wrestling belonged to him and Arn. As you flip through the magazine, you also encounter the unforgettable advertisements that filled wrestling publications of the era, and they tell their own story about the culture surrounding the sport. One ad offers fans the chance to appear on the cover of Pro Wrestling, illustrated themselves through a novelty promotion called Photozines, where readers could send in a photograph and receive a framed cover featuring their own image placed among wrestling superstars. For many young fans, the idea of seeing themselves on the cover of the world's biggest wrestling magazine must have felt like stepping directly into the spotlight of the wrestling world. Another page is dedicated to Michael Hayes and the rebellious spirit of Bad Street USA, offering posters and merchandise connected to the flamboyant Freebird star. The ad invites fans to decorate their walls with Hayes' image, capturing the rock and roll swagger that defined the Freebirds during the mid-1980s. These advertisements might seem like simple promotions, but they were part of the experience of reading a wrestling magazine in the 1980s. Between the stories of champions and rivalries, you were constantly reminded that wrestling was a larger culture, with posters, merchandise, subscriptions, and fan clubs all waiting just beyond the magazine pages. As the issue closes, you are left with the sense that wrestling in 1985 was expanding rapidly, with personalities like Ric Flair, Sgt Slaughter, and Roddy Piper dominating headlines, while rising teams such as the new Minnesota Wrecking Crew promised to reshape the tag team landscape. Every story, every interview, and even every advertisement contributes to a snapshot of a moment when professional wrestling was bursting with characters and rivalries that felt larger than life. See you next time. Farewell from the Empire State.